Welcome to another Mistroli tutorial. I figured out why I'm having some video audio syncing issues, mainly because I'm using the EOS webcam utility with a blue microphone, and they're going through the computer, and they're definitely recording at different rates, so I gotta figure out some solution for that. But until then, bear with me. So, we're going to talk about the timeline sequence panel a little bit more in depth, and basically how data is interpreted in that timeline, and how you can make different changes that depend on your different needs. We're going to start by looking over here at the media bin, and you're going to notice up at the top we have our sequence, and then down through here we have our different frame rates for our different clips. All of them are 23.976, and then one is 29.97. You might ask, why are they 23.976 and not just a nice clean 24? Well, let me tell you. 24 frames is kind of the standard in Hollywood cinema, and it kind of gives the feel of this storytelling element that is larger than life. And that's kind of where that came from. Along with other things such as like mechanical movements people had to make to produce film rates and stuff like that. But the issue kind of comes in when we go to broadcast television and they're filming at 30 frames per second or 29.97. 24 doesn't go into that as cleanly, so they actually had to reduce, I believe, by 1%. You math folks can double check that, but 23.976 goes into 29.97, a little bit cleaner than just squared off 24 and 30. So there were some adjustments made so that when cinema made it to broadcast television, you could watch it from the comfort of your home, and it would work correctly. If I understand this correctly, I think, and you can double check that, math people, I believe every sixth frame is lost at a 23.976 conversion, but I can't remember. Basically, you lose a frame. We don't notice it, obviously, because we still watch TV and never think, oh, the frame rate's off. But there's that. Now, just a quick reminder, this is your timeline or sequence panel. And to understand what information you're seeing in there, you can go up to sequence settings, drop that down, and over here you're going to notice that your timeline is at that 23.976 and at 1080p or 1920 by 1080 with a 16:9 aspect ratio. That's pretty standard, and you really don't need to change that right now unless you have a very specific reason. Some of y'all might remember the old 4:3 aspect ratio, but we are working in that widescreen now. There's some other information in sequence settings you can change, such as audio, the sample rate, and then some other file formats. We don't really need to do that right now, but as you advance, you might see need to change that. Some other things that you can do, 29.97 could actually be interpreted at other frame rates, which would then reduce, you would actually lose frames, but this program does understand how to interpret that. When you go in, you can right click on that clip, go to modify, go to interpret footage, and you can change that 30 frames to really whatever you want. You can assume it at 1 frame per second, or you can adjust that to 24 frames, whatever. You really don't need to do that here, because what you're ultimately going to do is drag this into this timeline whose settings were based on the first clip brought in. First clip I established was this one of me, and it was at 23.976 or 24 frames per second. So that is also how that footage is going to be interpreted once it's brought into the timeline. The only time you might want to do this, and that's and essentially you are going to lose a few frames when you do that, but what you might want to do is change this in order to slow some footage down. So let's say you shot it at 60 frames per second and you wanted to bring it down to 30 so that every other frame was removed. You would actually slow down your footage and you would see that slow motion effect. And you would do that all right here. So let's go ahead and save that. We're going to keep it at 29.97. And I've already dragged it in. It's actually this clip right here. Now, some things to remember about your timeline. This is your playhead right here, and it's going to show anything that is above that. When you look down, think of it like a bird in that bird's eye view. That top video is going to be shown. So it's me, it's me, it's me. Oh, switch to my wife working on a shoe. So as this plays along, it's going to show her working on that, and then it's going to all of a sudden dip back to the original video, and that basically is going to allow you to make different cuts. You can work in other footage. Another thing you might remember is when I said you could change this, you might also want to change maybe some broadcast footage of like a news story or something that you might be cutting over in a similar fashion, where it just cuts over and you might not necessarily use the audio. You could change that to match the frame rate of the rest of your clips, and it would help kind of keep that very seamless and smooth. Like I said, you can export at 24 frames per second, and that would all it would kind of keep that rate the same anyways. Some other things you can do in your timeline is adjust these sliders to see more or less of your clips. So right now I'm kind of zooming in vertically into my video clips. I can do the same thing to my audio clips. And the main thing, you might want to do this more often in your audio clips, mainly showing this rubber band here. Remember, that can adjust your audio, make quick audio adjustments. If you're just doing a quick video, that's the best way to do it. You can also, from this, if I select this audio clip, I can also keyframe here. Now, keyframing is really just showing specific points that you might want to manipulate in your video, and the program tells the timeline how it should be played. In this case, I increased the audio level at a steady increase from this point to this point. This would be the best way to do it. You can also do it if you go into your effects tab. You can also make changes in your audio tab. So there's multiple ways to do things. This is probably the best way. And if any of y'all are working on the ACA certification, that's probably the best. That's probably the most used way in that test. So there's a lot of different adjustments you can make. Remember, you have your tools over here. Two things I want to kind of share with you that I use to help streamline my workflow. I really use the C and V hotkeys on my keyboard to make changes in here quick. If I hit C, you're going to see that it switches to your razor tool or your cutting tool, and V will switch back to your mouse. Those are the main two I use, and yes, I am a beginner. Your experts might use the keys a little bit more effectively, but that's kind of how I use them, mostly in just building my sequence. Another thing you'll see up here is this green bar, and this green bar is actually showing what has been rendered. You might know that term from After Effects or hearing it in animation, but basically it's taking the effects and squishing them together so that in your playback it plays seamlessly. I don't really have a lot of effects, so it didn't really matter here, but right here you'll notice I have a little yellow bar. Yellow is okay. You're going to see most of the time this is going to be yellow anyways, but if I come up here and maybe my playback's been a little glitchy or the sound might be skipping because I have a lot of effects in this, I simply go up here to Sequence, go to Render Into Out, click that. It's going to run a quick render. It might take longer than that, and you'll notice that that little yellow bar is now gone because it's been rendered. When you export, so go up here to File, Export Media, it's actually going to do that automatically anyway. So if you do it here, it's not that big of a deal. If you do it beforehand, it's not that big of a deal. You can wait here, but it mostly helps with your playback so that it runs a little bit more seamlessly over here in this panels window. Remember, we're using H.264 because it transfers to the internet the best. That is an MP4 file, and it just works a little bit better for our needs. We're going to change your title here, and then you can export. I don't need to export right now, so we're going to cancel. And that's that. So, hopefully this helped you. Hopefully I explained things thoroughly. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, y'all have a great day. Change the world, make good decisions. Thanks.